بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Okay, so now this is the fourth condition, رفع الحدث.
Uplifting ritual impurity. This refers to ablution, wudu.
Okay, so the fourth condition is removing ritual impurity. And this is wudu. Now the Shaykh here, because wudu has a lot of ahkam, a lot of rulings that pertain to it, he's going to mention also the conditions of wudu and the obligations of wudu and the pillars of wudu and also the nullifiers of wudu. He's also going to mention that because wudu is something which is really important and has a lot of rulings. However, because the book is titled Conditions of the Salāh, it's not titled Conditions of wudu. So the Shaykh, he's not going to go into too much detail. He's not going to mention the adillah. He's just going to mention what they are and he's going to move on. So this word here, رفع الحدث, removing ritual impurity. Al-hadath, ritual impurity, is of two types. You have hadath akbar and hadathun asghar. You have major impurity and minor impurity. Minor impurity is when a person is in a state where he needs to do wudu. And if a person is in a state where he needs to do wudu, now, like I said, this book is a beginner's book. We're not going to go into the khilafat or the difference of opinion. I'm just going to mention some things that the ulama, or most of the ulama say, and we're going to move on. So the ulama say there are three things that a person cannot do when he's in the state of minor impurity. The first is pray Salāh. The first is to pray Salāh. The second is touching the mushaf, or touching the Quran. The word Quran is actually the words of Allah. The actual book is known as a mushaf. So touching the book, touching the mushaf is not allowed. However, reciting the Quran is allowed. So reciting from memory, or reciting looking at the mushaf without touching it, that is allowed. And the third is at-tawaf. The third is doing tawaf. These three things are not allowed if you do not have wudu. And the other type of hadath is, or the other type of ritual impurity is major ritual impurity. This is where a person is in a state where he needs to have a ghusl, he needs to have a shower or a bath. What makes a person need a bath or need a ghusl? There are six things which cause a person to need a shower. Now some of the things we have mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَاللَّهُ لَا يَسْتَحْيِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not shy from the truth. Some of the things which we mentioned that nobody should be shy from. Why? Because these are part of the religion. If you're shy from asking or learning about it, then you could be falling into haram. That's why in Bukhari, he brings the statement of Mujahid that two types of people will not learn. The shy and the arrogant. Arrogant because he thinks he knows everything, so he won't ask. And the shy one because if he doesn't know anything, he won't ask about it. And he'll remain ignorant. And even, I think it was Salama, she even came to the Prophet ﷺ asking about the menstrual cycle. And before she asked, she said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not shy from the truth. So then she asked the question. Obviously, a woman might feel shy asking a man a question on this topic. However, it's part of the religion. And it's something that she has to know. Something happens on a monthly basis for a woman, so she has to know these rulings. So she came and she asked the Prophet ﷺ. That's why I think Aisha radiallahu anha, she says in Bukhari, in Muslim, Ni'man Nisa Ansar, that how great are the women of the Ansar. لم يمنعهن الحياء أن يتفقهن في الدين. That shyness did not prevent them from learning about the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the things which cause a person to have a bath or a ghusl is firstly ejaculation. This is both for a man or for a woman. And this is in any way, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's masturbation, even though it's haram. Anyway, if a person does that, then he has to have a ghusl. So if a person ejaculates, for example, and then he just does wudu and prays Salāh, that wudu is not accepted. The second is sexual intercourse. Okay? And notice the difference between the first and second. The first is just any ejaculation. The second does not mention ejaculation. And the reason why is because as soon as the head of the private parts of the man enters into the woman and you can't see that anymore, even if the person does not finish, ghusl is obligatory upon that person. And a lot of spouses make mistake on this, thinking that, because we do not ejaculate, we do not finish, it's not obligatory upon us to do ghusl. As soon as the head of the private parts of the man disappears, that's when it's obligatory upon both of them to have a ghusl. The third is hayd, is the menstruation cycle for a woman. So as soon as she finishes, then she has to have a ghusl. And the fourth is an-nifas, which is post natal bleeding. After a woman gives birth and she bleeds, after that she has to have a shower. The fifth is when a person passes away. Obviously the person who passes away, he's not going to have a shower himself, but it's fardu kifaya, it's a collective obligation upon the Muslims in his area to give that dead body a ghusl. And this is an obligation. If nobody in the community does this, everybody in the community is sinning. However, if a small number of Muslims get up to wash this body, then the obligation is lifted upon everybody else. And these are the two types of fard when it comes to the religion: fardu ayn and fardu kifaya. Fardu ayn is that which is obligatory upon every individual, and fardu kifaya, which is obligatory upon everybody, upon the community. And if a certain number of people do it in the community, then the obligation has been lifted from everybody. But if nobody does it, then everybody is sinning. And the same is for the janazah prayer. If nobody prays the janazah, then everybody in that community is sinning. And the last is when a new Muslim accepts Islam, he has to have a ghusl. Another thing I want to mention regarding a man: if a man or even a woman urinates, then obviously he requires to have he requires to do wudu. There are also other things which come out of a man which has different rulings, and there are 4 things. The first is urine. Bowl. The second is mani, which is sperm. The third is madhi, which is pre-seminal fluid. And the fourth is wadi, which I don't know the English translation for. Anyone know what the English translation is for that? I'll explain what it is, and then if you can work out a translation, then you can use that, inshallah. Wadi is basically that substance which comes out just naturally during the day due to either the temperature being too hot or temperature becoming too cold. Due to this, sometimes, not every person, but sometimes something could come out of a man's private parts, and it's not urine, nor is it sperm, nor is it pre-seminal fluid. Pre-seminal fluid is that fluid which comes out at the time of desire, but it's not sperm. So maybe sometimes before or sometimes after this comes out. Okay? And it's different. It's different to sperm. In the color, it's more see-through, and sperm is more a cloudy color. And even the way it comes out, sperm, gushes out, whereas this just comes out, a little tiny bit comes out. So there are differences between the two. And sperm is known to everybody, and urine is also known to everybody. What's the rulings on this? Urine, madhi and wadi. So urine, pre-seminal fluid, and wadi, all of these 3 are najis. All of these 3 are impure. Meaning if all of these fall onto your body, or onto your clothes, or onto a place where you are praying, you have to wash it. Wash it. And also it requires for you to do wudu only for these 3. Regarding mani, sperm, if that comes out, that requires a person to have a ghusl, to have a bath. But sperm in of itself is actually pure. In of itself is pure. And the dalil for this is Aisha radiallahu anha. She said that the Prophet ﷺ on his thobe, he used to have some marks of sperm. And she used to, with her nails, scrape them off. And if you wash it, all of it come off. If you scrape it, not everything will come off. And to further prove that, is that she said, the Prophet ﷺ, without it being washed, would wear that thobe and he would go to pray, and I would be able to see the effects of the sperm left on his thobe, and the Prophet ﷺ would pray. And this hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. So that shows sperm in of itself is pure. So sperm goes onto your clothes. It's not necessary for you to wash it. It's better to wash it. But in terms of if somebody prays and he finds that, oh, there was sperm on there, then he doesn't have to repeat his salah, nor does he have to wash it. This is regarding hadith. And what type of hadith are we talking about in this book? We're only talking about minor hadith, minor impurity. We're not talking about major impurity. Two of the points I want to mention. When it comes to hayd and nifas, menstrual cycle and postnatal bleeding, this is something which is very important for both men to learn and for women to learn. Women to learn because they themselves go through this, and men to learn so that they can teach their women in their family. Because how would you like it if your sister, your mother is going to a random person asking this question? If there's a need, then obviously yes. But wouldn't you rather that you would want to teach your family, teach your wife about these rulings? You wouldn't want your wife to go asking somebody else, and then especially when it comes to those things, those which are more delicate, and you wouldn't want your wife going to somebody else and start describing all that was going on to a different man. You would rather want to answer that question yourself. Obviously, if there's a need, then obviously she can go, or she can send you to go and ask the man. But it's better for you to learn yourself. And for a man, it is a very difficult topic for a man, due to the fact that a man doesn't go through this. That's why I remember Shaykh Amir Bahjat in Masjid al-Nabawi, when he taught this in Zad al-Mustaqni', when he came to the beginning of the chapter, he said, whoever doesn't understand this chapter, don't worry, forget it, just move on. He said, don't worry about it, don't think about it. If you understand it, you understand it. If you don't, just move on. Because for a man, it is very difficult. And even one of my teachers, who's a student of Shaykh al-Masan al-Abbad, he mentioned that if the Shaykh would be asked a question about hayd and nifas, he would say, ask somebody else. And he's the muhaddith of Medina. He's the one from the time of Ibn Baz and Albani. If you go on YouTube, you can find debates between him and Albani and Ibn Baz. And he's very old now. He's blind. I don't know how old he is. He's over 90 or something. He teaches in Masjid al-Nabawi. So if he's asked a question about this, he says, ask somebody else. Even though he teaches Bukhari and Muslim, obviously these chapters come, so he teaches it. And the reason he says this is because there are those ulama that specialize in this field. So he says, go to them. If they weren't there, then obviously he would answer. The point being made is that these are very difficult chapters for a man to understand. But that's why it's so important for men to, if they see something being taught on this topic, they should go out to learn. And more so women. Yeah, because obviously a woman wouldn't want to go to somebody else to try to learn about this. There's one question that comes up a lot, and I want to answer this inshallah, which is a woman allowed to recite Quran when she's in the state of a menstrual cycle? Okay? Now generally for a man and woman, if a man is in a state of janaba, major impurity, it's not allowed for any of them to recite Quran. A question could be asked, what about dhikr? If somebody wants to recite after, somebody wants to recite Ayat al-Kursi, if somebody wants to recite the dua of safar, all this is in the Quran. If the intention is that they are reciting dhikr, doing dua, then it is allowed. But if the intention is that they want to recite Quran, then it's not allowed. This is referring to the man and woman who are in the state of major impurity. Now, what about a woman who's in the state of her menstrual cycle, for example? Now, many of the ulama, they say that it's not allowed due to the fact they do qiyas upon major impurity. Okay? And an extra benefit, inshallah, is that when it comes to fiqh, there are four main adillah. There's Quran, there's Sunnah, there's ijma'. This is the consensus of the scholars. All of the scholars agree upon this. The fourth one, which everybody agrees upon also, is al-qiyas. And qiyas, in simple terms, is basically when you have a ruling in the religion which has already been established by the Quran and Sunnah, and then you have a new ruling which has no clear dalil for it. So you look at the reason why the first thing was made haram. If the same reason is there, then we also give the same reason, ruling to the new thing. For example, drugs, is weed mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah? It's not mentioned. But the Prophet ﷺ gave us a qaida, kullu muskarin haram. Everything which intoxicates is haram. So alcohol has been made haram for that reason. What's the reason? Because it intoxicates. Does weed or any other drugs intoxicate? Yes, that's also haram. So what the ulama do here, so these are four adillah that everybody agrees upon. And then there are more which some ulama differ. For example, a saying of a sahaba in of itself is a dalil, istishab, istihsan, and so many others. What the ulama do here, those that have said it's haram, they do qiyas upon a person who is in the state of major impurity. Why? Because a person who is in the state of major impurity, he needs to have a ghusl. A woman who is on her menstrual cycle, she also needs to do ghusl. So some ulama say they're the same. And there is one hadith, but it's da'if. And I think Shaykh al-Islam says all of the ulama, all of the people who, all the muhaddithun say it's da'if. However, the correct opinion is that a woman is allowed. Okay, she is allowed. For the reason being is that there's differences between a woman being on the menstrual cycle and a person who's in a state of major impurity. And this is known as al-qiyas ma' al-farq. Even though they both have to do ghusl, there's many things which are different between the two states. Firstly, let's say a man is in a state of impurity. He chose to be in that state by having sexual intercourse or whatever it may be. Okay? Secondly, that was done out of desire. That was done out of desire, whereas menstrual cycle is not done out of desire. Thirdly, if somebody is in a state of major impurity, he can get out of that major impurity whenever he wants. So he just goes, has a shower, he's not in a state of major impurity anymore. Whereas a woman can't do that. She has to wait. Okay? So these are three, there are many more as well, but we're just going to stick to three. These are three main differences between the two. So for that reason, and this is the opinion of Imam Malik, and also a riwayah Imam Ahmad, and also Shawkani, and also Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, that a woman, if she's on the state of, she's in her menstrual cycle, it is allowed for her to recite Quran. However, Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, he says that a woman should only do this if she is in a state of necessity. Meaning, it's a need for her. She's not reciting it just to recite. However, she is reciting because she's memorizing Quran, it's her daily wird, it's there's a class going on, so she has to recite. If there's a necessity, then she can recite without any doubt. If there's no necessity, even though it's allowed, it's better for her not to, due to the fact that most of the ulama say it's not allowed. Okay, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Hanifa, even Imam Ahmad and the Mashhur, they say it's not allowed. So it's better for her not to. Okay, for that reason, just so she doesn't fall into the khilaf. And if she wants to get reward, she can recite hadith, she can read tafsir books are fine, as long as she doesn't read the ayat. She can do all of the other acts of worship, but it's better for her not to. But if she does, then there's no sin upon her, inshallah. Anything that's doing anything which stops the water reaching the skin, you have to remove that before doing the wudu. Even if it's hard for you to remove, it doesn't matter. You have to try your best to remove it.